Dave Weigel from Semafor and Sabrina Rodriguez with The Washington Post join me now. All right, you two, a lot to get to today. I kind of want to talk a little bit about the politics of Iran, especially as it comes to domestic politics. I'm very fascinated by this dynamic between Thomas Massie, the Republican congressman from Kentucky, and Donald Trump. I want to play a little bit of sound of what Massie had said over the weekend to our Face the Nation.
In the Senate, I know there's efforts to support you, but the Speaker of the House, who is from your own party, has really rejected this. He says the Article 1 power of Congress really allows for the president to do this. It was a limited, necessary, targeted strike, he says.
Well, he's probably referring to the War Powers Act of 1973, but that's been misinterpreted. There was no imminent threat to the United States, which was what would authorize that. And I think that's peculiar to hear that from the Speaker of the House.
All right, so then today, the president took to social media to say, get this bum out of office ASAP. Now, Massie, as we know, is kind of an anomaly on Capitol Hill, but this is stuff he's been talking about for years and years and years, predating Trump. I'm curious, Dave, kind of what you make of this. I mean, it seems like what Massie is describing here, which is, hey, Congress should have some buy-in before we go to war, is something that would be appealing to the MAGA base that doesn't want him to intervene.
Appealing even a couple weeks ago, before this happened, if you looked at polling and you asked Republican voters what they want to do in Iran, they did not favor a strike. And we've had one piece of snap polling. We'll see more. How many Republicans came along with Trump? That was the story of the Republican House. There was Massie in the Senate. There's Rand Paul. In the House, there's also Marjorie Taylor Greene. The rest of the Republican Party went from criticizing the idea of striking Iran to being honestly in line with what J.D. Vance was saying, after the fact, that we're not at war with Iran, we're at war with their nuclear weapons program. Would they have accepted that answer from Kamala Harris or Joe Biden if they drop bombs on bunkers? Probably not. But that's where most of the Republican Party is, and that is the tension right now is how much further does this go? You don't have MAGA Republican buy-in on anything more than airstrikes. And you wouldn't have had them under a different president. They do under Trump. They do have such faith in Trump that he's not going to expand the war. They go back to the Soleimani strike. They go back to actually the first term, that they're not following Thomas Massie into saying we need to do something to prevent a total Middle East conflict.
Right. And so few members on the Hill want to take any vote related to this, actually be on record with this, right? I mean, politically, that's so difficult, has been for the past 20 years. Sabrina, I'm curious, though, because the president's PAC is saying it's going to go after Massie. Does that carry any weight? Will that work?
I mean, I think if you talk to Trump's team, they're certainly betting that they can do it. But what's interesting is as we head to the midterms, of course, the more attention Trump puts on this race and trying to unseat Massie and put in a different conservative, the less attention he can pay on other things. And at a time when you're talking about such narrow majorities in Congress, this is sort of a, you hear some Democrats saying, yeah, let him put all his attention. He's saying that he'll go out and campaign for someone. They're still trying to figure out who would be a good candidate to go against Massie. I think Democrats see this as potentially an opportunity for them. And then when it comes to Massie, he's saying, I'm a tried and true America First congressman. As you mentioned, he has a long record of making these statements. It's not a flip-flop for him. So he's sort of welcoming that attention and that battle.
Yeah, it's really interesting to hear someone like Massie saying Congress needs to intervene here, because that is kind of the unifying message among Democrats. Dave, how are Democrats feeling about all this? They're obviously limited in what they can do.
In some ways, they're less unified than Republicans. Even when you talk about is it unifying to call for a war powers vote? Well, Hakeem Jeffries told reporters a couple hours ago he hadn't read Ro Khanna's war powers resolution with Tom Massie, which Khanna has been very, if you're paying any attention to political news, very hard not to hear about what Khanna's bill is, very hard not to read it if you just go online. And so Democrats are split between a couple of factions, but just broadly speaking, one that does support these airstrikes, that doesn't want Iran to have a nuclear weapon, that can go home and say that, can go to donors and say that, and a younger anti-war base that does not care, does not see America's interest in Israel as a priority, does not see what Benjamin Netanyahu wants America to do, which is strike Iran with bombs that Israel literally doesn't have, doesn't see that as a priority. So I think you're going to see Democrats split more in the next 24 hours than you will see Republicans.
That's a fascinating dynamic, and we've got an eternity until the midterms. We'll see kind of how this plays out. I do want to ask about the DNC and the RNC. I mean, the RNC has vastly outraised the DNC here. I think the latest numbers are that the RNC has almost 5 times more cash on hand than the Democratic National Committee. I mean, Sabrina, that seems like another thing to add to the Democrats' troubles right now.
Absolutely. I mean, one of the things that you'll hear Democratic strategists and lawmakers saying is, the party infrastructure right now needs to be just raising money. Ultimately, the DNC is not known for having, the face that everyone at home knows and, that's the leader of the party everyone knows. For them, it's the behind the scenes, building that infrastructure and saying, okay, if Democrats want to retake the House in 2026, they want to make a dent on, Republicans' majority in the Senate, they need to have the money to do that in those races. And instead, the headlines we see coming out of the DNC is a lot of infighting, a lot of the future ideology of the party. And what we're hearing privately is some donors saying, we don't really know what the vision for the party is, so that makes you less inclined to want to sign a big check for the party.
Which is so fascinating because there seems to be so many moments that they can capitalize on for fundraising. But we'll wait to see kind of how that all pans out. Sabrina and Dave, thank you both very much. We'll talk to you a lot coming up.